Everybody, welcome to episode 73 of Tactical Crouch. We are a competitive Overwatch podcast. We're two weeks away from Overwatch League. Can you believe it? Felt like just yesterday.
Yeah, I was.
That's
I was
because
just
we're
thinking
getting
about
old,
that.
and our time perception is very off.
Dude, after high school, it feels like I just skipped to like 25.
Should I make you all a little bit sad? In terms of your time perception, I think it was either 24 or 25 when it's the middle of your life.
Yeah.
It's kind of sad, right?
It's weird.
25 is the middle of your life?
In terms of time perception, because as a child, everything drags, and because new experiences, like it slows down, and then when you're bored, everything moves so slowly, and everything, like for adults, just in terms of time perception, it's way quicker. So theoretically, it's around 24, 25. It's the middle of your life.
Can I get existential for just a moment?
Here we go.
Let's get serious, boys.
Developed a fear of dying over the past 4 months. Weirdest thing ever. Like existential crisis.
I had that around very much the same age in my life. I had it after a car accident, though. It was like mortality in your face.
Yeah, I had something similar. Like when I was younger, I very vividly remember like not sleeping one night and just like being like mega upset about like some serious stuff around that same topic. But you know, we're all
right. That was a bummer.
It's a happy thing.
That was a bummer.
Happy.
We're all here.
We're all here. We're all talking about Overwatch. It's hype. It's lit. You know, as the kids say.
It's lit. Joe just said lit on the show. Everybody take a drink.
I'm in a very good mood. I don't know why. It could be the copious amounts of Red Bull I've had over the last couple of days. Might have something to do with it.
Fair. Fair enough.
You know what I noticed? Like, did you guys play like organized sports in any way when you're younger? Like I was
to a fault.
I was the captain of my football team, right? And
soccer,
yeah, whatever. And before every match, there was this excitement, you know, like that little bit of, oh God, it's about to start, you know. And then also the captain has to say something. We have this, you know, stupid like greeting for the other team or whatever. It's always like, oh, like, okay, don't mess that up. I have that in front of before every tactical crouch, just a little bit, you know, and like not bad stage fright, but like a little bit of excitement. Like, let's go.
You get some butterflies, you know, flowing. You're just like, all right, let's put on a show. And I think it's like even more so because like Owl's like really starting to get close.
Yeah,
and it's like,
all right,
giddy. Yeah. I get to, you know, really dive in with those VODs with the replay viewer. I'm about to use that. We, you know, weirdly enough, there's, you know, weird stat site changes going on. So that's exciting.
Oh yeah.
It's a fun time to be an Overwatch fan.
It's a fun time to be an Overwatch fan, but it's even a more fun time to be a listener of this podcast because we're going to cut the intro and we're going to get right into it. You like that?
All right. Let's
go. Let's just jump right into it and let's talk about the first big piece of news this week. YouTube and Activision Blizzard announced a multi-year, multi-esports partnership that includes the Call of Duty League, Overwatch League, and Hearthstone esports, and also is a multi-year agreement about using Google's cloud infrastructure, which is actually that's the agreement, and the streaming rights are kind of secondary, but as Blizzard esports fans, I think we all gravitated towards the Overwatch League on YouTube bit.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, did either of you watch the Call of Duty League last week at all?
Yeah. I watched a little bit of it.
Like watched a little bit too. It was in Minnesota. It was at the Armory. Like I went to college like 4 blocks away from where the armory was. Minnesota actually has a team, whereas Overwatch League does not. They took the teams out ice fishing, which is pretty cool.
Really?
Go to get a Juicy Lucy at Matt's bar. It was like great. Like it was, oh man, it was so nostalgic. So here's the thing. I haven't watched Call of Duty ever. In fact, I'm very anti Call of Duty from all my Halo years. So, but I tuned into an esports I had never watched and a game I never played outside. I played some of the Battle Royale portion of it just because Minnesota had a team. So I am your anecdotal evidence that
it works.
It works. And I'm a Minnesota Rocker fan. And
which team is Gary V associated with?
Minnesota Rocker. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Which is also really cool.
Who's operating that team? Like esports wise?
It's a like the endemic esports.
Yeah.
I don't know who the endemic one is. Okay. I'm pretty sure it's a venture capitalist firm though. That's
interesting.
At the forefront of it.
Interesting.
So, by the way, Juicy Lucy is a cheeseburger with the cheeseburger cooked inside. That's not some innuendo or whatever. It's not like the name of
cooked inside like what, a bun?
So you cook the patty. You put the cheese inside the patty.
Oh,
it's life-changing.
Huh. I'm sure. I mean, it doesn't sound bad. It's just like
it's actually. So I used to, when I was in Denver, they used to have $59 round trip flights from Denver to Minneapolis, St. Paul. And when I got really homesick, I would go there for a day, get a Juicy Lucy, and meet one of my cousins at the Nook that's right by the airport, and then go back 3 hours later.
Huh.
It's that good. Anyways.
Hot pocket version of
Call of Duty League kind of they debuted the YouTube partnership with Call of Duty League. It was really interesting. I think the really interesting thing for me personally was the fact that the streaming bandwidth cap is significantly higher.
Yes.
For Call of Duty or for YouTube than Twitch, or even, as far as I know, Mixer, at least for partnered Mixer streamers. Mixer streamers have a cap at 10K. Twitch has a cap at 6.5K, though there's some ambiguity in that and some, like, I don't know, gray area in that. But like for most people, it's 6.5K. MLG, I believe, was higher.
Yeah, that was the draw. It was,
but I don't
Twitch
know that
brings
it's a specific number.
Yeah, Twitch brings the most people, then like YouTube like gives you the functionality with a little bit of higher bitrate, and then MLG, like you max bitrate, it looks beautiful.
But I also thought MLG was a little bit ahead. That's what was the only reason why I didn't watch MLG, because when I wanted to watch with people, I kind of wanted to be on the same time frame, so I went to Twitch, but I would have preferred going to MLG.
That's what I constantly hear, like in like weird podcasts where people are talking about streaming rights and like the weird like kind of streaming war that's going on. Is the big draw off of Twitch is like the back end. It doesn't give you the same bit rate.
Like, I would love to see a 1440p 60 Overwatch League stream. That would be nuts. But the bit rate is higher. They were streaming Call of Duty League at 25 megabits per second, or 25,000 kilobits per second. So 4 times higher than Twitch, 2.5 times higher than Mixer, which was really great, really refreshing. Obviously, YouTube has much, or I want to say obviously, but YouTube definitely has much better transcoding algorithms. So being able to watch at a downgraded bitrate is a lot more of a smooth experience on YouTube than on Twitch. So technology-wise, I'm a big fan, but the big concern obviously is that Twitch is kind of the home of gaming and esports, and less so this year than any other year. You've got Shroud and Ninja gone. You've got Courage JD going over to YouTube gaming. You've got streamers like Darkness429 and Disguised Toast going to Facebook gaming. So there's this constant repositioning happening going on with it was who was it? So Heroes of the Dorm for Blizzard, they went to Facebook gaming. at least for some of it. The Smite League went to Mixer. Both have, I would say both experiments were largely a failure. I believe the Smite Pro League is still going on Mixer, but
Probably.
That tells you how much I know.
Yeah, it's that whole esports scene is like kind of small, kind of niche. It does well for itself, but I don't really see it kind of like exploding anytime soon. You know, it did okay. If Mixer wanted to get into it, you know, I'm sure it's doing fine, but to John's point, like, so that's how good it's doing.
Anyways, this is we're kind of building up to why this is significant here, in the sense that it's pretty rare for an esport to go off of platform. Overwatch League was kind of unique in the sense that they had a Twitch/MLG deal, right? And they were still able to stream Overwatch League on MLG. Overwatch League was also very unique in the sense that you had the command center, which I don't know. Do any other esports on Twitch have something like the command center?
Yes, League has the pro viewer. Yeah. Right.
League has the pro viewer. Got it.
I think CSGO in Select with Select TOs has something similar, but there again, they have like Go TV that's really not on Twitch.
Yeah. So So I think a lot of people are a little bit worried about losing that. Obviously, Command Center was a really great way to view Overwatch League. The Overwatch League has since said that they're working on and looking at ways to integrate those types of perks, including like skins and all that kind of stuff, into YouTube gaming, but there wasn't anything official from there. But what is interesting, and I wanted to talk to you about, Yiska, is that at first glance, your knee-jerk reaction, I'm sorry, I'm throwing you under the bus here, was panic.
No, that's fine.
You panicked a little bit.
Okay, so Captain Bad First Take. It's just baked into my subconscious, if you want, to just assume the worst and then work from there, right? My assumption was just like going from personal streams, like certain I can't really recall any names of streamer platforms, but like with Mixer, I suppose, like people go into Mixer, Shroud having like a fraction, Ninja having a fraction of their viewership. I didn't quite know what it was for YouTube. Facebook is probably worse even than Mixer.
Totally.
So I just assumed, okay, going off Twitch, you use a lot of.
I think Facebook is better.
Really?
Than Mixer, but the average, just from sheer number of viewers alone, right? So Facebook is so much larger that even though, like as a percentage, so many less people are watching a streamer on Facebook, the numbers are still largely better. And I've heard optimistic. Facebook is here in the Bay Area. I've met with some of the people over there, and I've worked pretty closely with some people on Facebook gaming. Not saying that Mixer isn't great and isn't getting better, especially with Ninja and Shroud going there. But Facebook gaming has this really interesting kind of endemic random discovery algorithm that goes through all of Facebook. So you can literally be watching a video, and all of a sudden, boom, you're on a live
and it just
stream.
be like recommended. Weird.
Yeah.
So,
and anyways, I want to talk about algorithms as part of that as well, just a little bit towards the end of my point. But I was scared that there wouldn't be live viewership, and to a degree, I still believe it's absolutely possible that we're halving our viewership, especially totally. with the loot boxes, or not loot boxes, but the tokens not being available seemingly at the start of the season. I always thought at least around 20-30K of the viewership was around that. I justified that by looking at the amount of viewers that stuck around at the start of the restream and how long they then stayed later on. Maybe that's maybe that would happen to every channel that goes offline after a certain amount of time, because people just fall asleep depending on the viewership demographic. Like, it's of course very late in Europe. Be that as it may, I looked at the League of Legends stats for all their national leagues, and YouTube was doing surprisingly well, especially for Worlds. So Worlds, it wasn't quite 50-50, but it wasn't that far off in terms of viewership distribution, right? So, okay, let's assume that for one thing, what we absolutely know is the interaction with Twitch streamers is like you put that stuff on YouTube and then it cross-pollinates, or rather like the YouTube channel then feeds into the live audience, right? So that we know that there's a connection. Like I'm pretty sure the vast majority of Twitch users are YouTube users as well. There might not be YouTube stream viewers. That might have to change.
Sure.
But of course, selfishly, I have to say, for me as a content creator, it seems very possible. I already saw comments about that with CDL, that algorithms will pick up on who watches Overwatch League live or CDL live. And then in the recommended tab that you have on the side of your video player, recommends content, esports content that stands in connection with it. Now, of course, Technical Crouch is one. Maybe I'll look into...
Recommend us, Overwatch League. Let's go. Sorry.
So there's an opportunity that it's in general, I think we need to a more informed audience is a more involved audience. So like if people consume more third-party content or just shoulder content from the league, that just entrenches them more into the scene, is my thinking. I think it will be more important to have that shoulder content next season when it's so wildly all over the place in terms of schedule because of the different time zones, even though we'll have to see how that works out with the complications in China at the moment. We'll see what the solution there is. But generally, I hope we can have a solid increase. I absolutely expect it to go like 200k somewhere at the start of the first day, maybe tops. Then we're going down, and I wouldn't be surprised that if by week 2 we were at 40, 45, 50k.
Yeah, totally. I think that's very reasonable numbers. Yep. I'm not even shooting for 200. I'd be happy with like 100 on day 1. Because again, like you're getting a lot of people who don't really keep up on the off-season news cycle. They're like, oh, Overwatch League is starting. Again, I think they're doing a pretty lackadaisical job in promoting the season start. It's a lot of just retweeting old content. They're really not drawing eyes. So the numbers are probably going to be pretty slim early. And again, I think this is a good idea in the long run. One point that I will bring up is the fact that I do think that streamers in general from Twitch might come over to kind of get ahead of the game, to try and build up a YouTube streaming audience, to kind of chase the coattails of the Overwatch League in general. Again, get put into that recommended algorithm. And with that algorithm, I think that we might see a boost from team content with the league's rights now being solely with YouTube, and that recommended kind of algorithm pushing more content out there. I think teams could open up a big growth. It's almost like a fertilizer to help these teams see that like they should be making content on YouTube. They make more of it. It gets recommended. It's this positive kind of feedback loop where they really grow their YouTubes and outgrow, they grow their reach. I wouldn't say open up a monetization stream, because there again, like YouTube really isn't, I don't know if it's making a ton of people money anymore, but it definitely, it's the most used app in the world. I'd imagine it's one of the most, if not the most.
Definitely the most popular video platform, however you want to use that.
So it's so important for these teams to like have a platform there, to have unique content. Like I want to say in the inaugural season, Florida Mayhem had their, docu series where they followed the team around and played highlight clips. That gets more traction. The Houston Outlaws doing funny banter, that gets more traction. All of this gets more traction because it's on YouTube. You're already there. You use it in your day-to-day life. It's going to recommend you that content. It's going to get more exposure. But on top of that, we also need YouTube gaming streams to be more discoverable as well. I think that's a big criticism of the platform right now, is that you can't really find it. anywhere. You kind of have to dig for it a little bit. So that kind of has to be looked at a little bit more, kind of retooled.
That's the big thing, right?
Yeah.
So like I went to try and I basically watched two things on YouTube. I try to keep up on politics because I have a lot of like this stuff going on with impeachment and everything else. Don't worry,
Sure.
we're not going there. And then the other thing I try to watch too is gaming streams. You can go to gaming.youtube.com and there's kind of a pseudo directory, but it only shows you the most popular games. You can't search by streamer or game. You can't really see if like X streamer is online unless you go to their channel or they're in the recommended part of it. I don't think it's going to be an issue for discoverability for Overwatch League, honestly, because I have a feeling if you go to gaming.youtube.com or live.youtube.com, it'll probably almost always
just
be recommended. Like yeah, it'll just be like that's
probably
got to be part of the partnership, right? But for the people who are streaming who aren't Overwatch League, I do think that still is an issue, and I do think that it shouldn't be an issue finding Overwatch League and then finding their streams, but I think everything beyond that, I think, is in CDL and probably Hearthstone esports to a lesser extent. But there still is just like, as I would say, simplistic and maybe a little bit too far back in time as the Twitch discovery tools are of this, like this really basic of like, you can sort by most popular streamer.
Yeah.
You can sort by game, or you can search for streamer, or you can search for game. And there's some discovery tools in there and a place to see everyone you're following and if they're live. But outside of, that, Twitch is largely like very basic and simplistic, and YouTube doesn't quite have that figured out yet.
Yeah.
And
I will also say, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I will also say, like, I understand when people say, Sip said in chat that they don't understand Twitch chat culture. I will say though that there is a definitely recognizable psychological phenomena, especially in live streams, of a particular range of emotes being tweeted at any given time. So if someone has a sick play and the PogChamp comes in channel, that seems to, and I notice it in myself, seems to activate the circuitry that thinks like, okay, we're sharing like an amazing moment with everyone. It's not much different, or it is similar, I would say, to sitting in the stadium and a goal happens or whatever, and the crowd roars in a sense.
It's a Zoomer stadium, yeah.
Yeah, it's like a virtual stadium where it's not on the letters, but on the emoticons that activates that.
And the emotion.
And that's also why, that's also why every highlight YouTube channel, or very many, will overlay the Twitch chat over the gameplay action, even if it's not on the stream, because it enhances. It's like a live react of thousands of people or active participants to that particular moment in time, and it seems to enhance the experience. I think YouTube has a lot to do there. I don't think, like, the cool part about Twitch is that it feels so customized. Like you can identify with certain streamers, you subscribe to them, you have their emotes, and then using their particular, that's why PogChamp has nth iterations of all kinds of different streamers, but the general notion, or the emoticon needs to express that facial feature and the emotion behind it. And as long as that is the case, the rest is just like identity behind it. So
sure,
but the general emotion that is shared is the same. And I think to that degree, honestly, this is worth a dissertation. Honestly,
it is.
I think if Twitch, just like thinking long term, if Twitch was to lose out in the streaming game battle, I would wager it is because also others like got up to speed on that particular aspect, because it seems such a Twitch-esque invention. It's like at the most basic form, it's like basically like someone reading like what's the Egyptian letterings called in the English?
Hieroglyphics.
hieroglyphics, just sitting there and just going like having a certain emotion to pictures. It's weird, but
Pictures
it works.
of corn. Wow, a hippopotamus. Sweet. I don't know what that means, but awesome.
Yeah,
Alligator.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were. Who was it? Was it you, Yiska, that we were talking about? How do I even sub this? Was it you, me, and Dream? We're like, how do we? What's it like? You have subscribe, you have join, which is now subscribe.
Mhm.
Subscribe is follow for Twitch, so you're trying to like figure that out. They have $500 stickers to send.
Yeah.
If you want. Yeah, I think, and I think the overall just kind of like where Twitch wins. Twitch only wins in how in the creators it's aggregated and the community it's created around. It's I would say just the website
culture
in general and the culture and the emotes.
Yep.
Take those out of it. I was saying it like if nobody was on any platform and everyone's like, day one, where are we going? Twitch would be not first or second, in my opinion. I think YouTube Gaming and Mixer are both better platforms than Twitch. I think Facebook Gaming and Twitch, you could probably make some arguments back and forth, but it's I don't know. I if it was gonna go anywhere, I'm glad it's here. I'm like, I can't think of anywhere else I would rather.
The other two, I'd be much more cynical.
Yep, Facebook and Mixer, I would be like, well, it was a good run. Project A is right around the corner.
Not a good look.
It should be fine, I suppose. But it's it's going to be interesting to watch and see. We're definitely going to be kind of watching it closely. I don't want to spend too much time on this. I think a lot of people have already discussed it, and there's, I think overall this is probably a positive deal. It's definitely gonna be interesting to see how people consume their Overwatch League now that they have a much more capable VOD viewer.
Yes.
Right. I think it also makes it a lot easier to go. Like a big part of Overwatch League and a big part of what kind of sucked about Overwatch League is if you wanted to go back and watch the VODs, you either had to go through the Overwatch League website or you could try to go through that horrible VOD organization that's Twitch. And
to be fair, they had them on their YouTube channel, but you were just not tied into it, or they had them.
And usually they
later
were a bit
They took
later
a time.
on. Yeah, they took some time, and they were like trans codes of the Twitch stream, I think, so that the quality wasn't great.
Mhm. That's true.
So yeah, I'm optimistic about it. I'm excited about it.
Should be.
It wasn't
should
like
be all right.
Overwatch League was breaking any. Well, actually, they were technically breaking viewership records, but we won't go into that.
Well,
but
okay, and also keep in mind, like I'm slowly waking up or to the realization we're honestly creating something that doesn't fit into our normal notion of esports.
Yes.
We have an entirely different audience with different preferences, with different demographics. Also, I would assume in terms of gender, we are simply like the lessons of esports apply to a degree, I think, but we are still very different, and to learn that is going to be challenging for content creators, for the league itself. Like I think esports experience only brings you so far in terms of where the league is trying to develop itself. I think this esport could have worked endemically and promoting it endemically. That's not where we're going, and it's an interesting experiment now. But YouTube could therefore fit into that entire ecosphere more
better home.
Than our like already slightly like bend from the norm Twitch culture. So I think in general just it's very on brand. It fits the brand.
That's a good way to put it.
That's a great
way to put it.
Let's cap it on that then. That's a great place to end it. best of luck. We'll find out in a couple weeks if it ends up.
Even that, I wouldn't. I like.
No, we will be able to make our assumptions and know it all in a couple of weeks. First 2 days is all I need.
All right.
I'll tell you though, John. If the Overwatch League has like 15K viewers, I'll sit here. I told you the minute
You can't back out now. You already flip flopped once.
I can flip flops all.
One more time, and I have to take you out with the laundry. So, okay, fair enough. Let's talk. There's a couple roster moves. We're actually not going to discuss them because we've discussed the teams already, and I don't think that they actually affect. One affects the teams, but we're talking about them next week. The other one doesn't. So the Valiant have released Slur, who is now known as Provide. Slur did make a comment. Largely, it seems to have been due to some very inappropriate comments made over the course of the past few years.
Yeah, he provides racism. Yeah.
Okay. All right. There we go. Yiska said it. I'll let you just go read the comments for yourself.
They are vile.
They are
honestly
vile.
Yeah.
They are vile. Not but. They also said they provided a public apology about it. You can also go Google that as well. And you know, we're not getting into that. It's that that's bait.
Extended
That's bait.
Figure.
That's bait.
It's the Tom Hardy Mad Max
that right there
gif right there.
That's bait.
That's bait. We're not going into that. Also, Fearless joins the Shanghai Dragons shortly after Envy retires. This is going to be a great one, but we're talking about Shanghai Dragons at some point over the next two. At some point over the next 2 episodes. Who knows? Maybe they'll end up in the power rankings this week. Maybe they'll be next week. Tune in to find out, and don't listen to Joe ever again. I'll
also have I already, during the last 10 minutes, I was already bullied by a coach who I will not disclose who it was like, you have us there? What? So
that sounds like somebody. That seems like it's very on brand for somebody. Won't name names, right? Won't name names.
Sure.
Interesting. All right.
I don't think it is who you think it is. Okay.
Whatever. It doesn't matter.
All right. Well,
I'm just memeing.
It's power ranking time. Woo!
Here we go.
It's time to discuss some power rankings here. And it's everybody's favorite time of the year. Power rankings. Power rankings, power rankings, power rankings. Wolf introduces power rankings this last week. We're not gonna go into it, but
I mean, he's making Bearhan some money. I tell you that. With those takes, hell yeah.
That was such a funny tweet. Oh man, we're gonna delay power rankings for a second and just say. So Wolf,
we're gonna talk about Mr. Clown.
So Wolf went ahead and put out his power rankings this week, and there's some surprising ones. It was Florida Mayhem. We're up like 7th or 8th. Fusion, we're down around 12th or 13th. I think those are the big one. Toronto was at 19th, which is the one I actually hated the least out of all like the controversial. So there were some pretty controversial picks there that I didn't necessarily love, but
I just want to know why. I don't really care that they're that low. I'm like, but why though?
I even asked for clarification because power rankings, like if you're being honest, power rankings, like from a literal point of view, what we're doing is not necessarily power rankings. They're end season rankings, right? Yeah. Power rankings usually refers to what is the power level right now. Now, if that's the case, I still wonder who he's talking to in Korea because he might just have very different information about the Scrimbox there. Particularly, I'm surprised that Seoul is this low on his list. If he actually has Scrimbox and is talking about
Washington Justice above Fusion and Guangzhou.
I would put money on that. Like I will put a large sum of money that does not happen.
I would put all of our patron and ad money from a month. I'm just kidding. I don't.
No, that's
I don't use
Scrimbucks from the crack house. Yeah,
but it's man. I don't know.
But even with
impossible.
Like power rankings, right? In the truest sense of the term, how can you look at the Philadelphia Fusion and the roster that they've built and say that they are worse on paper in power level than the Washington Justice or Chengdu Hunters for that reason? That's difficult for me to see. And that's why I'm like, okay, but why? Why do you, where are we not thinking the same here? Because this is like night and day.
Yeah.
So anyways, Proxy Wolf just posted those out. I posted them in chat. They were very interesting, controversial, whatever. Power rankings at the end of the day are less about the ranking, more about the justification. 100%. And whatever, I don't care. Give me your power rankings all day. I don't care. That's fine. But Bare Hands, I can't. I don't know if it was shortly before or shortly after, posted and goes, once again, the Overwatch League preseason power rankings from the community and finger quotes experts are way off base. Since I'm not with the team, looking forward to making a lot of money by exploiting this. And the comments
How much money can you make out of a team that went 6-22? I wonder.
All right.
So the comments were really funny, and I think he set himself up to just be like, LOL, remember Florida Mayhem, LOL. So anyways, I don't know.
Which to be fair, I don't know if anybody else is gonna say this, but if you go back and watch our episode with Albert, the GM, general manager of the Florida Mayhem currently, he makes it in a third party kind of proxy intimation that it wasn't his idea to do this. Wasn't his idea to go fully Korean. So whose idea was it, guys?
It wasn't his idea to sell the squad that eventually half made up Valiant to that made a comeback.
The squad that beat the Fusion University in Contenders ended their dynastic run. Wasn't his idea.
What a shit tweet. At least put your opinions out there so we can ridicule them or praise you for it afterwards. Like just say that, mate. Yes, every one of us could make money off that. Season 1, I checked. I could have made like unsensical amounts of money with that. It doesn't mean anything.
I think it's probably really illegal for me to bet, but I'd like to.
Are just wacky.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very. I mean, he's not wrong in the sense that his kind of major point, I guess I would say, was that the people who are taking bets on Overwatch don't have a lot of insight and are likely very influenced by community power rankings.
Totally.
And it's a real opportunity for anyone that follows the scene and isn't contractually prevented from placing bets.
DraftKings, what's some other ones? Betway, get in touch.
The thing is, it's so volatile.
He was baiting people now with that though. Like, yeah.
I mean, it is bait. Yeah.
And that's, we're back to it. That's bait. So
I was very close to hitting RT on, the gauntlet is so predictable.
Yeah, right.
And then, what? Atlanta one? Okay, I take everything back. Yeah.
Jeez,
Remember that, Bare Hands? Come on.
Oh, he got him. Boo. All right. Anyways, that was fun. But that's your friendly disclaimer. Power rankings are just ways to
they're more for fun.
Provide context to your justifications.
Yes.
So
numbers next to teams don't tell me much of anything. Tell me why you think.
Read the conclusions and
remember. The first half of last season, I finished third, I think, in power rankings. I'm a f***ing idiot. Anybody can do it. I can run the ringer on bets. But look at me. I'm not, obviously. I'm just trying to make you lose money in your bets, Bare Hands. There you go. All right, let's talk about...
That's actually the reason I'm doing bad power rankings. That's why I have Chengdu so low.
That's we're going to get there.
I'm all in on Chengdu.
We're going to get there. We're going to get there. But first, I do want to talk about our first team today. Our first team today, we've actually... Two of us have already rated them already in the bottom 10. But one of us has not. We haven't discussed them at length, and that is going to be the Los Angeles Gladiators. For myself, at 11th, Joe, 12th.
Yes.
That seems low.
Yeah. So 10th, 11th, and 12th for all of us.
It's not 11th, but there's reasons. There's
yeah,
reasons.
10th, 11th, and 12th. I mean, come on, that's pretty close. And not all of us had the privilege of putting Chengdu 16th and get that spot back. So okay, let's just slow our roll for a second. LA Gladiators. Let's talk about them first. So the Los Angeles Gladiators are largely a very new team. Just Big Goose and Shaz holding down support here. Let's Yiska, because you've got them rated the highest. I want to ask you why you've got them in your top 10.
What about them sells you? What's the selling point to this roster?
I think so for one, I think they have a pretty amazing coaching staff now.
Yes.
They got two of the most or what I consider to be success. Two of the most successful former contenders coaches in Face and
Faustus.
Yeah,
Curry shot.
Yes. And in that regard, like I think Faustus is that's the third name actually with AT back in the day. That seems to be a very, very good coaching staff to me that should be able to at least strategically get a lot out of them. Also, when the meta changes often, I think those would theoretically be flexible enough to adapt to those situations more often or quicker. 100%. So that inherently boosts their rating.
Before we get off coaches, would you say that the coaching staff is their best lineup? So if we take supports, tanks, DPS, would you say that the coaches are the best? I
comparatively to the others, yes. I
think the coaching staff is the selling point to this roster. It's not the DPS. I think the support line. No,
you won't see me defending DPS on that roster. Right. Now, if we get back to old meta archetypes where the DPS aren't as important, that could suit this team. I think that tank line has potential to be very good, though I wonder how flexible Space will be. And I think off tanks will have to be very flexible, but this almost serves as a justification to me to not put them even higher. I think OGE has amazing potential. I think Space, if we're actually in a Diva meta, like that is, and by the way, whoever said that, that's not what I heard. I heard one team plays, or the one team I heard about that played Ryan Diva was Vancouver. Like that's I don't have an idea on the entire. That's the reason why we don't have a Scrimbox Stock Exchange article yet, because the meta kept changing so much that there wasn't anything meaningful to say. Now I kind of conceived of it. I'll just give you all the information. Like they were good there, weren't good there, and then that's how it tells the story about adaptability. Maybe, I don't know. But in terms of that. It's possible apparently to play that. I'm not sure if that's actually established meta.
But that's a good thing to super tangent, but that's a good thing. We're having disagreements. Well, not necessarily. I'm just generally for the league. We're having disagreements on, we don't think that hero's good. We think this hero does a better job in this role, in this position. So that's what we play. Disagreements, I think, is really going to give people the versatility in hero diversity that they want.
I'll also say, like, I heard, for instance, Samito say, like, McCree is still, like, too vulnerable. I've literally heard Overwatch League coaches say he's invulnerable now.
A lot of people. So what I'm hearing right now is a lot of McCree. So a lot of McCree actually being played, and he's very good. And he basically kind of tossed. There's some teams still trying to, like, exploit Hammond and Wrecking Ball and stuff. And between McCree and May, you're just like, well.
Yeah, you can't dive into that.
What do you do there, right? Yep. So
I mean, it's not live, but people, of course, are.
They're screaming on PTR.
Oh, is a 50 HP McCree got reverted?
Got reverted.
I see. Yeah. Okay.
But they're not
Still,
screaming on PTR, I don't think. I don't think they're screaming 250 all the time.
Well, not all the time. No, not all the time. But I mean,
yeah.
some of their scrims were probably split.
Yeah,
But
other than that,
Gladiators.
Okay, Gladiators. So I think there's some questions to the front line, especially like in terms of like, okay, can OG actually pop off and like deliver on the potential that he was promised to have by so many coaches now?
Yes.
Then I think their backline is just solid. They're probably never going to be like a liability for you. Probably also won't be elite.
Nope.
I don't think they were ever elite, honestly. And then, yeah, the DPS line is, of course, like a colorful bag of skills. I'm being told Birdring is finding himself right now. And it makes sense to a degree that,
of course,
like, once you get him out of that that environment, that this happens. Maybe he is just like a stone the entire season, and we'll have to see how this works. The other two are question marks for me. And as we heard with what Depay said, like they still have a slot open. It would, I would see that to be like either DPS part or if you need another off tank, depending on the meta switches, whatever. Right?
I don't know if I agree that Mirror is a question mark.
I think he is.
Honestly,
I think we've seen him in Goats play Zarya very well, but I haven't seen him lately do anything with any other heroes. I really
Reaper and Hanzo are fine. Slip above average.
Sure, but the thing is, what's fine in what context?
I mean, is Doom but I mean, he doesn't have to. I don't know. I don't think that he has to be a top 5 flex DPS to make this a top 10 team. To be fair, like, and I had them at 11, and I actually wanted them at 10, but I put Toronto Defiant twice. So, there's that. I don't know. I think Birdring is the question mark for me, honestly. I'm the resident idiot, but like, I think we know Jaru's hero pool, and I think that on those heroes he'll be fine. If he has to flex off that, sure, question mark. But if he gets to stay within the heroes that he's comfortable with, great. Birdring is a mental nightmare.
I think that whole lineup is a mental nightmare. I don't think this DPS line is incredibly stoic in the slightest. I think OGE can be paired within that as well. And that's my big point. I think where we differ the most is how important a DPS lineup could be, especially this season within Rollock. I think DPS in general have gotten a lot more theoretical kind of investment of like where you're going to place your money and what roles. I think in the past, tanks and supports were your money ball players, if you want to call them that. You want to get well, if anything, it was the DPS, but you would put more investment into your tanks and supports because they give you the most value, right? I think this season in general, I think you're going to want to have strong DPS more so than any other meta or season.
Does Mirror have a May?
I literally
I don't think he does. And Birdring played Reaper in Reaper May meta, right?
Yeah.
So
even before that, like
I know
way back
Jaru has a May. Jaru is the only one that I know that I feel like I've seen extensively on May.
I really dislike.
So I'm assuming that they have Reaper Mirror working on May. They want Birdring to stay kind of on that flex because as it stands right now, May is pretty staple.
Yeah, 100%. And you're comparing them to the strongest conference. Like we'd all be in agreement to say that PAC is probably the stronger conference, right?
They are in Pacific, sure.
Right. Yeah. That's difficult to me to say that this DPS lineup, Mirror might have been good before. But when you're comparing him to Chengdu's DPS, Charge's DPS, not Spark, Seoul's DPS, Shanghai's DPS, Shock's DPS, Titan's DPS.
Not close.
It's not close.
It's
not
really
close
not
at all.
Close.
So wherever we're at with the
only
DPS
10
line,
teams. There's only 10 teams in Pacific, right? So like I get the justification for 10.
So I mean, I don't hate 10. I think I think again, our disagreement comes in on how much we weigh the DPS. I weigh them a little bit more.
I can't. I wish I could argue with you more on Mirror, but I'm just I can't hold a.
I don't really have an argument so much as I don't think I don't really see him doing all that much. I think he'll be fine, and that's where they fit. Play-ins.
Yeah. Just to explain, I feel like I have to explain why I don't have them higher, not why I don't have them lower. That's
really
like I think that's my feeling on this team.
I get that. I kind of feel it. So I had to step out during like the tank conversation, but I think something that gets missed too is that OGE wanted to go to the Gladiators and he wanted to play with Space. Like that was the big deciding reason. So like yes, you're right. It's a volatile there as well. And OGE, I don't know. I think people overplay how he underperformed, but
he was on a pretty mediocre team. Let's face it, guys.
Mediocre roster who is kind of making a name for themselves for having really frustrating coaches to work with. So, like I don't want to write off OGE is just not coming to LA Gladiators and popping off. We saw Gladiators. I think they performed to our expectations, but I would say they still kind of outperformed overall last year. And I think a lot of that has to do with just the coaching staff in general. Deepay, shoulder check jokes aside,
they've assembled
has clearly found a way to make that. And you talked about it earlier. Curry shot is largely. We've had multiple coaches come on the show and talk about how he is, if not one of the best strategic coach, for sure Western strategic coach in the game right now.
That's their strongest lineup.
And I agree, and I agree with that.
Their coaching staff is the strongest lineup for the Gladiators. If there's any team that is going to squeeze blood from a stone, it's this team. If you're looking for the team that wants to be more than the sum of their parts, and I don't even think this roster is like all that bad, but if they're going to like really outperform, it's going to be the coaches, hands down.
Do you think LH Cloudy plays wrecking ball for this team?
That's hard to say. Maybe if that's being run, and it might be run like later in the season when betas change and stuff. But I actually kind of think that they'll probably trade him. I think he'll be trading.
I recall some aspect where he talked about like having to be on ball duty and how there was an issue with him having to flex around that during his Paris stint that made it so he felt less confident in his overall level of play because he couldn't really grind into a hero. Now, I'm not sure if that has anything to. Sadly, I don't recall the source of that information, but I'm not sure if it really had anything to do with Ball and his like him not wanting to play it. I think it's more that you kind of want to know your role and what you need to grind into, and then become good at that. And his
role was just always changing.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah. By the way, I said something dumb earlier, saying like the Gladiators could be using their last roster slot on an off tank. Of course, not the case, because I think it's actually quite a bit of a vote of confidence that both the pay and also Curry Shot, being his former coaches, brought him back. Like at the very least, what you can say is that he's probably a glue player.
Who's he?
Bishu.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think
don't see him playing
play.
though.
I think Space is the wonder kid here.
I think it depends. Even with that, doesn't he have like a nagging like health issue that he has to kind of like keep in check?
Sure.
I think that's my big thing. That in the locker room, you want to have him be the Mickey character and be that glue guy. Totally, I'm all for it. But I really struggle to see where he finds playtime.
Yeah, I mean that the thing is that doesn't bar him from grinding into a specific off tank role. That like I think we can expect that there's some inflexibility in Space. Can we not?
No, I like that's my podium. I think that Space in general is leading the pack when it comes to like questionable flex tanks. We've only seen them play Diva for such a long time. where else can they play? A lot of people point towards World Cup and his Sigma play and the USA winning gold medal.
Sure.
Woo-woo. But
I mean, yes, but that sort of gave him a lot of wind-up time to learn that hero.
Sure.
And this is not an off-tank, so like maybe there's less transitional property, but when he was asked to play Sombra, another player that was
Jax comes in.
Taken over, and it's not like this kid had any like large experience on Sombra. Like we had promise on the show saying, okay, I needed to teach him that in 3 days. So like teachability, especially for off tanks, I think Sacho is right, and I think we like we said it earlier at the end or like at the start of the off season, this was always going to be the case that like if patch changes happen very often, it's very likely that it's going to be breaking Sigma, and then also it won't stay on Diva for as long as it did beforehand. So the off tank hero pool, the skill sets you require in that very specific hero pool is wild.
Yep.
And like not just in terms of like mechanical abilities that you need, like think of what kind of intricacies you need to know, or like little techs you could know on ball, for instance. Like every angle, like you're learning maps and whatnot, but it's not just that. You also need to learn different play styles per hero. We've already seen that some players excel at aggressive play styles on a hero and then deflate when they have to play more defensively. So it isn't just that. And the entire, like for instance, I'll tell you right now, I don't think many people think Janu, like from Overwatch League coaches I've talked to, will excel at that either. They all thought his Sigma wasn't amazing. Like he's basically known for his Diva, and they don't have confidence in him being able to pick that up, and they wonder why the Titans didn't pick up in a second off tank. So I think Sacho is exactly right in saying that this will be a focal point during this entire season, where you need either one player is hyper flexible, or a player that has like a solid hero pool of like 2 or 3, and then you have another player that grinds both. 2 or 3 different heroes, and then you got it all.
I can't agree that. So the what I'm gathering here is some uncertainty around space, and I just can't agree with it. But
yeah, to a degree.
And also to be fair, they've got Bishu to keep him accountable, and honestly, they've got. Like, and I'm not saying Bishu's great or anything, but I just like it's not
a question of skill.
Quite comprehend why space is a question mark here. When you've got OG, you've got I think their DPS is far more volatile. But even then, I think Mirror is. I trust Mirror more than Birdring and Jaru. As far as
I do as well. But even then, I don't think he's like a strong point in the conference or in the league. I think for the team, he's going to be fine. He's going to be like the Shaz of DPS. Like, I don't think he's going to go out and feed, but is he going to win you a game by himself? Whereas a lot of other teams have very strong
he will.
DPS.
Once or twice. I don't think it will be a regular occurrence. Yeah. And not as regular as Birdring used to do it in season 1.
100%. Right. And with space, I go back to the question with the Valiant. It's like we ask, the league is going to ask you to be flexible into playing Sombra, into playing a DPS. He couldn't do it. They brought in another player that could do it. Why is that? I think there's a question of flexibility, and I think we're going to have to apply that to a lot of other flex tanks, and I think we're going to have to apply that to supports. And I've been saying that for a while.
And we also have precedent cases where they showed immense flexibility, such as Fury.
Totally, yeah.
All right,
or Hotba, to be fair.
I don't want to get flamed too much by YouTube comments for my thoughts on Gladiators. So
I think if you're going to criticize space, you're going to catch flack. So be prepared.
Well, I'm not criticizing space. I'm on Team Space. Anyways.
All right, Team Space.
All right. Let's go on to the next team. And this is one who Joe and I agree on. Yiska.
What's happening?
Yiska does not agree on. Team number 2 is the Chengdu Hunters. The Chengdu Hunters. It is.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm ready to slap with this team.
Yeah, this team, they brought on a new support duo, Molly and Lengsa from LG Huya. They made some coaching changes, to be fair. RUI no longer at the helm here, doing some co-head coaching roles with Ray and sorry, Joe, you're gonna have to Dokebi.
Oh, Dokebi? Yeah, it's like a name from Rainbow Six.
Got it. So brought in A-Ting from Nova Monster Shield, signed leave, like they've made some changes this year. I think to say the least. I think one of the big signings, though, I want to talk about their signings first, and then we'll talk about the overall team.
Sure.
The first one, and I think one that I think garnered the most interest overall, was the signing of support duo Molly and Lengsa from LG Huya. Joe, you were helping frame this for me a little bit as I was trying to do more research into Chengdu. I was asking, how do these fit in with Yveltal? What's your thoughts? Actually, we talked about a totally different team, didn't we? We did. You sent me. This is what you sent. This is what you sent me VODs for. Thank you.
Yes.
Sorry. So I'm just dumb.
To clarify, are we including leave into their signings?
No.
Okay.
Because they
would argue that
technically
he's the more
went
important one.
free agent and came back, right?
I think they had to put him as like a streamer, and then they announced him as like officially joined the team along with the announcement. But
so leave us. Yeah, let's talk about him anyway. But
I think he's the most important one here.
Sure. So he's the most important new name. So let's talk about Molly and Lengsa for a second. How does this duo fit in your opinion, in this team?
So these should be very familiar players if you watched Contenders, especially the live events. They played for the team that bottomed out. Arguably shouldn't have ever been there in the first place, but this is the team, LG Huya, their former academy team. They bottomed out. They were supposed to do well. I had them doing well. They sucked. Some other Chinese team that I'm not going to get into did way better. I figured they were going to suck, right? Weird role reversals. Molly has been a standout player in Contenders. Lengsa is okay. I think he'll be fine, but I don't really see him playing over Yveltal ever at all. The big one comes in. The big question here is that flex support with Kyo and Molly. I like Molly a lot. There's two big Chinese flex supports coming into the league, and it's Molly and Coldest, which we'll get into. I've been a big fan of Molly. I think he's very flexible. I think he's more consistent and still has a lot of firepower. Kind of has a carry, almost Jonak play style at times, but can dial it back and be more supportive and kind of play other heroes. Whereas Coldest is very much, you want to put him on BAP, you want to put him on aimers, and let him kind of do a lot of heavy lifting, right?
Sure.
Kyo last season, if we're looking at just pure stats, as much as we can, did not perform very well at all. I don't think he was detrimental, but wasn't a standout performer on a role that I think you're going to really have to invest into this season in particular. And I think Molly is a nice addition. I don't think he's going to blow your socks off, but I think it's going to be a pretty nice improvement, a pretty sizable improvement over Kyo.
Interesting.
Lengsa, not so much. Not so much.
Yeah, I talked a bit about with Kenobi, since he's doing all the Contender stuff for China. I try not to ask Joe all the questions about China because I just don't want to say things before Joe's going to say them anyways on the show. And he said a lot of the same things that you did here, is that, Molly and Lengsa are probably the top duo in China. I mean, obviously Coldest is, I think you could argue, maybe one of the most prominent, sought after.
I think it's like 1A, 1B. I'm not as fond of Coldest's tendencies to feed, and his decision making seems very poor. His aim I would say is better. I think he does a lot more, like damage is affecting the game a whole lot more, but Molly is the consistent factor.
Yeah, well, that's the big thing, is that they didn't really stand out at all. And I was watching the VODs you sent me, and I just noticed, I'm like, watching the kill feed, I'm like, these guys don't show up on the kill feed as much as an assist feed, as much as other support duos, but everyone ranks them so highly. So I had to go back and watch again and look at other parts besides the kill feeds and ult usage. And I was like, oh, yeah, this actually makes a lot more sense when you watch it from a different lens, that these are much more, I think, methodical, patient, and which is, I think, a little bit weird too for China, who kind of tends to go press W sometimes, I think. Oh,
yes, they're very much about pressing W. They're all about pressing W.
It was really interesting to me when they're like, oh yeah, Molly and Lingso, like they're probably the best support duo that they have in China. And I'm watching the thing and I'm like, why? How? And
I don't know if I'd say the best. I think they're up there. I think they're within like the top, but I think like Coldest and Miko probably were.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that was the one that
just a pairing.
And I think that they were signed by that time.
I'd give it to. Yes.
So, but yeah. So anyways, I don't know. Like, it's nice.
It's a nice upgrade. They're adding depth to support. This is something that I weigh quite heavily. Adding more players to your roster is going to be good as long as you can facilitate it, and that's where I go. And I don't know if that's a transition into coaching, but I do have questions at coaching. I do have my worries, but in general, in theory, a deep roster this season in particular is going to matter a whole hell of a lot.
Yeah.
Sure.
I will also say, to defend my placement, part of the equation of putting them solo was that they would not move in the transfer market.
Yes.
And I lost on that gamble. That's fine. I think more realistically, I wouldn't put them at 10. I would probably put them, I think anything from 13 to 11 would probably be my range.
I would agree with that.
Yeah,
I think it depends on how you view leave. I think that is a very that's a gamble, and that's a gamble that I'm taking. But a lot of the criticisms, especially Sideshow's criticisms, that definitely do impact the community, is the questions at main tank. You know, we've seen Among play Wrecking Ball to a great level. He has played a lot of different things in contenders, but let's write that off as contenders, and he's just a ball one trick, hypothetically. What happens if we play Winston? What happens if Reinhardt's meta? That's where A-Ting comes in. A-Ting is the circle peg to fill the circle hole. It's a very obvious fit. It solves a lot of the questions that the community is posing to Hunters. I really struggle to see how a 12th place team that has very obviously, to me at least, upgraded the roster goes down. That's where I'm looking at this. I don't think a whole lot of other teams have done massive upgrades. If anything, I think the league in general has gotten worse. I think this team has improved, and I've given them credit for it. Yes, head coach leaving. That's a big worry sign for me. 100%.
And how much of the team identity do you think was put in RUR and their ability? And I know, Yiska, you want to talk a little bit about patches. I don't know if it was about the frequency of patches or just patches in general, but we know, like,
I think that changes a lot. Honestly, like, also for Chengdu, I think, like, the idea that just because a team got better, like, you got to look at the last season and think, okay, did they get lucky with the meta that was chosen? Okay, maybe in Chengdu's case that wasn't the case. We don't know. Maybe a lot more lower level teams become better at the comp if their comp actually becomes meta. No idea.
It's possible.
But like, the thing is, the context is now different, and I think there are possibilities. I'm not saying that's the case for Chengdu, but
sure.
In general, like, as we see now, we are seeing a lot more patches come in. It's PTR 2 weeks later live. PTR 2 weeks later live. And while I'm not sure that we keep that 2 week cycle, by the way, this is okay. So here's my hypothetical, right? And this is a sort of slight tangent, even though it's sort of a meta discussion that should be consensus in power rankings. But for people that played World of Warcraft, for instance, they know that before expansions launch, systems go live in the main game, right? So there's something new skill tree, for instance, is
skills get put in before the expansion.
So then you get basically a 0.5 patch of the next expansion without the content.
Yep.
I can tell you, like, I don't have any inside knowledge here. Like, I was trying to dig what the information would be for this developer announcement. Yeah. And of course, everyone signed up the wazoo with an NDA and nobody's talking. But what I can, like, the assumption is that, or what I'm assuming is, why is it now that the patches can become quicker? So one prohibitive nature that I've heard about in the past is just like the engine was not suited to make quick changes very quickly, right? Also, who's making these changes? It's developers.
Yep.
But the developers work on Overwatch 2, so how could they have more time to make the patch notes?
Yep.
Now, to me, that's an implication that maybe we will hear something about Overwatch 2 soon. It is also an implication that maybe they fixed something with the formula of that. Like, for instance, I know that we heard after the first season, like, we couldn't get top-down views of certain maps because the client would glitch out for stuff like that, right? Or like changing things within that code. And let's not forget, we are playing a former MMO,
right?
Playing a, like, basically, like, we had this rock that was supposed to be an MMO, and someone tried to shizzle like a sweet game out of it, but there are cracks. Let's be honest.
You're talking about Titan, by the way, for people who are there. The Titan MMO that was scrapped and now and became Overwatch.
So now we need or we're getting a new engine, and we know that. I'm not sure if that new update would entail the engine. Maybe it's just a backend or whatever that makes it easier to influence or patch this in some way. But this is basically my thinking. Like, I made the tweet, and it was like 2 weeks ago, I think. It's like, okay, so for one, my idea is, okay, they are changing quicker. How is that possible when it wasn't possible before? Either they have new or more manpower because Overwatch 2 is largely done for those developers, balance and whatever. Or two, it is now much easier to do balance changes because how is that possible? Because of an engine upgrade. And I don't think that a new engine will come in before the season because that would be a competitive integrity nightmare, I think. I think that changes almost more than patch changes. Yeah. I think, like, the players having to adapt to new visuals is honestly quite a big deal.
Huge deal.
Maybe, yeah.
Heroes are probably going to feel slightly different too. So
figuring out why they feel different. Could there be box changes?
Like, even just something as simple as field of view, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So it can be so drastically different.
And then I think maybe they figured something out, how they get quality data out of the PTR, or they just found out we don't need to, and we can just, like, try more, have more iterations. And we see, like, even the pessimists are currently like, okay, nice, we're getting the patches, right? It's coming. And that's my inference. Of course, it could be super off. Like, this is not if I had anything to report, you damn well know that I would make my employer some money, right? Yeah. But that's just my inference.
So how does this affect Chengdu?
I think, like, if the game switches more,
okay.
I don't know much about the coaching staff. It's all to a degree unfair because it's definitely arguing with the gap of what I have. I think this team would have been way better with, or had the potential to absolutely exploit that situation of an ever-changing meta with Ray.
Yes, with Ray, 100%.
Because he is, like,
he did weird shit. He's been doing weird shit forever.
Yes.
I had to find the button. Sorry, kids.
So in that regard, I think they lost a bit out of that.
Yes.
I also wonder how they're just like how good they are at scrambling. I agree, like that DPS line is pretty sick, honestly, in terms of like just Jinmu is nuts. Like probably not talked about how elite he actually is.
Yeah. Now I will say, like, and I said this very early on when people were starting to realize that Jinmu was actually quite good. Once you put him in role lock with a meta that is not stabilized, but with players with other elite players that are going to mark him to be able to match him very well, I think that goes away. His Doomfist and Pharah are among some world class names, but once you start to throw in other heroes, he has a pocket May that he's ran in the past. I think that stock starts to go down a little bit, and that's where I have the sole read that I think Leave is going to fill in that, because if it let's face it, if Leave wasn't here, I definitely probably wouldn't be putting them at 10th with Bacon Jack as their only other DPS, right? So
I'll also tell you, Joe, if Leaf is actually still super nuts, that is one of the saddest narratives in esports. Yep. Because we would have legitimately, simply by the scene structure, lost a UZI type narrative of like a super sick Chinese damage dealer that stands tall above his peers and just like transcends that particular role, simply because we don't like to have 16-year-olds in the highest tier competition. Yep. Like we've lost 3 years of excellence from this kid, and that would be shattering. Honestly, how much does that suck? So, I mean,
how much sucks does that suck?
That was very German grammar that went there, but yeah.
And that's the fun thing about him in particular is that, you know, Overwatch goes through this dry spell. He's not of age. He goes and plays PUBG, comes back. You know, what team does he go to? He goes to Chengdu to kind of have his previous team kind of reassemble, and now everybody's basically left him, and he's stuck on his own.
Mm-hmm. Also, okay, now I have this voice now in my head that just tells me nobody knows who UZI is. Like you're talking to over 50% who've never had any esports interaction. So just to briefly explain, in League of Legends, there's now a legendary AD carry who's still nuts, who's super mechanically advanced, arguably the most mechanically proficient player in history. If we like Faker, yes, very mechanical, but I think Faker also in part has something to do with just his general awareness of it. Maybe UZI wasn't as smart about that, but in a region that wasn't amazing when he already was. There were 2 Chinese players in League of Legends that stood out during as legendary characters. That's Wei Zhao, right?
Wei Zhao, yeah.
And UZI. UZI, like if you go now to YouTube, like there's, for instance, if you look at the Rise music video, like there's this character of like a Chinese guy dressed up as Vayne fighting the protagonist of that the
video
of that video, and he like Leaf could have been that. He could have been that transcendent.
To be fair,
yeah. But we're missing like 2 years of history, like one, or I don't know. I think even for a solid while he quit the game, right?
Yeah.
Like he didn't even really play that.
All of MY left because of the dry spell. Nothing in Overwatch was happening. They left on a very sour note. I think they forfeited their last game in some like third party kind of Chinese tournament, and then went to PUBG.
Yeah, honestly, like this could reshape the entire idea we have of Chinese Overwatch. If this kid, and then he finds a couple of guys to play with, we have international events, suddenly Chinese Overwatch definitely established second best scene in the world during that time, with transcendental talents that could possibly be in talks for a GOAT.
Yeah,
and it's sad.
Go back and look at your Owl Pellets team. If you took like peak Miraculous Youngster and you took peak 1246 with Ray's coaching staff and allowing him to kind of fill out wherever he feels like that he was, deficient at. I really do think you put that under the Chengdu Hunters or whatever franchise you want, and I think people would be shocked. I think yes. There are some actual talents. How deep is the region in terms of talent? That is a question for another day. Spoiler alert, not that deep. But there is a solid team to be made from China that people won't expect that can do well. Will they win? No. Will they make playoffs? There's a good chance.
But I will also say, don't underestimate the impact one team could have on a region. Yep. Like we've seen it, for instance, in CS, there was this one guy that just helped his entire Brazilian scene to become great. His team became the best in the world, but he also helped like 2 other Brazilian teams to elevate their level, become top 10, top 20 teams. Like not entirely selflessly, because whenever he needed a new player, he took from these teams. But then again, like the scene had a renaissance of like amazing play, was probably the best at one point in time in CSGO. Like that could have happened in China, where when you have one world-beating team, the scene currently thinks, okay, wait, that's possible from here. And I think, again, like if Miraculous Youngsters actually has more ways to prove themselves, and Leaf stays actually this like
that good for this long,
he is a GOAT candidate.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And that's I tweet like you'll see me retweet this hopefully. I think it was towards the tail end of last season. Leave got announced to be signed to the Chengdu Hunters, and I retweeted and said, "This is say hello to your future team of MVP. At least he'll be a candidate."
But Joe, in short, 16th next.
Jesus, I mean, it's a segue.
I think it's shocking that people put them this low. I think I'd be okay with anywhere from like 13 and up, but I really struggle to see them below 13th. Yeah. I think again people are going to be surprised again. I'm going to be told that this team was built poorly, yada yada yada. I'll see We'll see who's going to be the Lord.
We'll see
who's next to lose.
We'll see how the China teams are affected by the coronavirus stuff too.
True,
because that
100%.
throws a whole new wrench into what travel looks like, what being at home looks like. So we'll just have to wait.
This was going to be like a home team wherever they were going to play in China. This is the Chinese team. This is the only fully Chinese team. So if you go to Guangzhou, that's a home team. If you go to Hangzhou, that's a home team.
Yep.
That does kind of fuck them, right?
we have to move on.
Yes.
And we need to talk about this next team. This next team has not changed a whole lot in the last 4 or 5 months. It's the Hangzhou Spark. We all have them at 9. Look at us.
That's the what was last year? Fuel. It was the only one that
Dallas
we had all
Fuel
agreed on.
The only one. I think
obviously our number 1 is probably we're all in agreement.
Number 1 and our number 20 are all the same.
Yeah. Number 1, number 9, number 20.
Number 1, number 9, number 20. Was there?
I don't know if there's any.
Agree? I don't think we were really close on London.
Sure.
But yeah, Yep. So we're. Anyways, Hangzhou Spark. Largely staying the same, adding Coldest and Mika to their support lineup. They are at 10 players on the season, but largely not changing a whole lot. They finished last season 3rd, 4th.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, they finished really high, but we're dropping them down here. 9th. And we should probably talk about that. And I think the first thing we should talk about is Coldest and Mika. So Coldest and Mika come in here as we kind of discussed earlier, arguably, if not absolutely, the best support duo in China. This is a team, though, that outside of Gushue, completely Korean players.
Yep.
Okay.
Was, yeah.
So, adding 2 new Chinese players to the roster here. Joe, you seem to think that despite Coldest being regarded as the best carry support in China, that he may not see as much play in Overwatch League, and we may actually just see Hangzhou stick with IDK and BB instead.
Yeah.
I thought that was really interesting, and I want to hear more about your thoughts on that.
I think there's a lot to be said about Coldest. I think he is very talented. But you're plugging a Chinese player into a mostly Korean speaking roster. That's like, skeptic eyebrow raise number 1. You're then taking Bebe out, who's obviously played with his team for a long time, has also played with a lot of these players like Godsby for, extended amounts of time. You're removing that synergy away from the roster, right? You're inserting Coldest, who has a very distinct playstyle, who demands a lot of resources, kind of not needs to be babysat, but, he needs to be planned with in mind, right? You can't just throw him in and expect him to work, because you're going to probably see him die a lot if you do that. He's going to walk forward. He's going to flank. He's going to trans for safety and not for the team. Or lamp, depending on what heroes are being played at the moment, or fade off cooldown a little bit too much and be abused. He wants to do damage. With all of that in mind, I do have my hesitations on saying that Coldest is going to see a ton of stage time, especially at the start. Later on in the season, come playoffs, yeah, there's a great chance that he could see play. I think just in terms of talent, I would say that he's probably more talented than Bebe. I think mechanically he's better than Bebe. I think Bebe's not bad. I think he's quite serviceable. But I don't see IDK moving. I like Mika. But if it's a battle, if we're going to think binary about this, I really have a hard time seeing IDK off this roster. But there again, with the advent of travel and yada, 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 roster depth is very important. Having more supports than not is a good thing. So having Coldest and Mika is a good thing. I just don't know about Coldest.
Here's an observation I made in my future foretelling.
Okay,
you know how my tea leaf said that Sebi Olby would be washed somewhere in season 1, and I had that as a topic with Sideshow as like to refute this. That actually ended up being a season too early. Now, when Godsby came in, I said that kid is washed. I think this kid is washed this season.
I think he's not great. Yeah, so to be fair, to defend him ever so slightly, I think he's going to benefit a whole lot more from being out of goats. I think he's going to be a role player, just like he was in playoffs. He's going to shadow step in and immediately wraith out to try and bait out as much resources as he can. He'll do fine. Worst case scenario, he feeds, but I think he's a role player. He's like an Eska type person. He seems to be a pretty vocal member, seems to be pretty important to the way that this roster has been built. Wasn't subbed out at all last season, even though his Zarya was hot poo-poo. I don't think he's going to be great, but I think he'll do okay. He'll be a role player. He'll be a workhorse. He benefits a lot from being out of goats. I'll tell you that.
Okay, so like hint, I don't think his backup is also that great.
No, his DPS is pretty. That's the downfall of this team is the DPS line. The DPS is not great. Their flex DPS in general, whether it's Adora, whether it's Sashin, who didn't really see a ton of playtime last year and his label is a flex, which is kind of true. Did play a lot of Devo, but in the past is a projectile.
Yeah.
Not great. Again, workhorses. If you look at Bazzi on Doomfist, wasn't great.
Yeah.
All serviceable. Tank line, super sick. Gusha, great. Rhea, great. I'd like to see a little bit more depth there. I'd like to see a standout DPS player assigned to this roster because they could be very, very good. this roster in the midseason, if they make just a couple of moves, make a trade here and there, you got a lot of supports. You might want to trade.
That's the hint, Joe. Though I've heard they've signed a DPS player, and I'm not convinced, dude.
Yeah, that one I'm not sure on either. Well, we'll have to see. But I think midseason, you've got some depth here to play around with as a resource. I think you can make some trades. I think you could get a pretty sick DPS on this roster and do very well. So,
yeah, I think
this
you guys are ridiculous about Godsby.
No, Godspeed's
you guys are dumb.
Just really quick. Sashin, I think, could be a hydration type of player for the Spark next season, as in like he flexes onto tank roles instead. Yeah. I think that's maybe the case. If like nobody, it's weird that we don't hear that much from that entire front much at all, right? So, but yeah, like if that's I assume that because I've heard that another DPS player is coming in. That's 5 DPS players. Yeah, that's Outlaws in a nutshell. Yeah, someone's got to move, dude. Like, yeah, we'll see.
I don't think they sell their DPS. If anything, they probably move them down 2-way because they're not going to see a bunch of playtime. And even then, they don't have very many like hyper specific players. Like Adora's kind of just again a workhorse. Sashin again is role flexible, but is that super valuable? Bazi. He has some widow. He has some widow to him. If anything, I know Broy loves to talk about the potato chips, but if we could get him to play flex support, I think that would be great. But I don't see that happening. I think they need a very specific type of player. I think they need a true like flex projectile DPS. I don't think you need like a colorless flex type player that can play a whole bunch of different things and do them all very well. That's going to cost you a lot of money. I don't think that that's feasible for Spark at the moment, but they have a lot of power in tank. They have a lot of power at support. Godsby's like, okay. He's always been just okay, whether he was playing with Time Boy and he was just being X6 Gaming's literal bitch. Like, I mean, he was playing Pharah. They had a tracer bot and Godsby was on projectile. He did fine, but he's always been the guy who's like, oh, I'll play that. No, it's totally fine. You want to play tracer? Totally cool. I'll play. Oh, Zarya. I can play Zarya. Not really though. And he's the role player of this team. He does okay for himself, but he's not like some standout player. If you're going to see a widow, it's going to be Bazi. Godsby's not great.
No,
not great. I like Godsby. I just don't think he's like some sort of killer DPS.
Don't backtrack it. Own it. Do the Yiska thing. Double down on it.
It's fine. Like finally, Joe is on my side because he's been a bit of a Godsby fanboy for the longest time.
Yeah.
So.
No. I've thought he's very flexible, and then Zarya hit, and I'm like, okay, Godsby, you're a little bit washing
to the washing machine with me.
Oh man, I can't.
He's been laundryfied. Somebody call Clorox.
I just disagree.
John wants to hot model, and
I'm saying
just
you
disagree.
need to sell the stonks, boys. This is not the year. He'll do okay.
Who the hell are the top 8 if the Glads and Spark aren't? You're about to find out, sir.
You're about to find out maybe not next week. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to find out
sooner or later.
Like next, because that's what we're going into next.
The entire top 8. Joe meant.
Yeah.
That was the disconnect. Okay.
Anyways.
Give me the 8.
I mean, top 5 is for everybody.
Am I getting mad? Am I going to get mad at Joe at any point today?
I don't think so. No, I don't think so.
I think we've gone past Chengdu, and
outside of Chengdu and I think Florida, if I'm thinking right.
I think
we're all pretty close. I think Florida was pretty off for us. Everybody else has been really close. Dallas was 11 through 14.
Dallas, yeah, that's
Toronto was within 13 to 17.
Yep.
But overall, we've been really close. So, anyways, should we talk about the next one?
Let's go.
All right. The next one. Seoul Dynasty coming in at number 8 for myself and Yiska. Number 7 for Joe. So the Seoul Dynasty here, 134.40. Time stamping it. You're welcome. The Seoul Dynasty have obviously made some pretty big changes, I think, overall. Yes. You've got half of the London Spitfire coming in here with Prophet, Jester, and Bedoshin.
Mm-hmm.
Jaehong no longer in the mix anymore. Fleta gone. The team is just it's not the lunatic high we have grown up to love. Creative promoted to what? Oh, Joe. All right. Okay. Anyways, we're gonna get there. We're gonna get here, but anyways, a little bit different. We've got a different roster here, and I think Toby stands alone, right, for Lunatic High.
Yeah, that's the last remaining boyo.
So, anyways, I mean, I don't know. Let's talk about the elephants in the room first. Yiska, you're not allowed to speak about Prophet at all for this episode. You don't get to say a single thing.
You got to kill me for that.
So obviously the first big signing I think here would be Prophet.
Yeah.
Yiska.
Yeah.
Are you a fan of Prophet here?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Honestly,
Next,
okay,
Joe. So
yeah,
what do you think?
No, but okay. Like, I think one fun thing for me to do would be, like, did my power rankings last year, right? Like, long ago. No, it's not. Okay. Of course, the more information I get, the, like, everyone that's, like, a solid Bayesian thinker rethinks their positioning, where those people are based on the information they receive. And Seoul is a team I would rank higher. Why? So I didn't have Fitz as like a really, really good talent on my what are you doing? What is that, the Fitz browse?
I think the stock exchange might be calling.
Oh yeah, exactly. That's the stock exchange browse apparently.
Yes.
Okay. I cannot control them voluntarily. I had this with friends in the past where it's like, do that thing when you concentrate. I'm like,
Yeah, right.
I cannot. That's just like involuntary. So, I think the DPS lines, honestly, like, forget about illicit. Not going to play a role in this.
No.
Fits, Profit, nuts. Like, this is one of the best DPS lines in
arguably the best.
We'll have to see, but this is honestly, like, I think they struck gold there. I think them committing to them is very good. Like, the best starting DPS line, we would have to say. And that has a big caveat, because I think, like, having solid, like, the best selection of the best 4 generally is very, very valuable over having the best 2, if that makes sense. Yeah. So DPS, no problems here. Tanks, well, okay, here we are getting into interesting territory. One, we only have one off tank, and that,
sure,
not even seeing who that off tank is a problem, I think, for the reasons that we discussed earlier, based on diversity requirements this season. The tank itself, not terrible, not transcendental at all.
No.
Gesture, I think that's the one where, like, I don't know, like, I hope he finds himself again across the season. Once again, from what I've heard, not starting the season all too well. Maybe even Marvel starting ahead. I'm not. I don't know. That I really don't know. Backline, Toby only main support.
Yeah.
Okay, that's an ancient situation. Honestly, like, he's not Chris bad. Let's say this.
No, I wouldn't even say.
Where is he, Joe?
He's like around like Gladiators feeling like. If you look at the conference in general, not great.
Even in
not
a
great.
Lucio meta?
I think he's fine. I think he's
everyone
probably,
has just
that's
at least caught up in terms like
Yeah.
mechanical ability. They're way better Lucio players now in the Overwatch League. Like Lee J Gone, Astro, Moth is probably he plays
Slime.
weird, but like you know that when they Slime is like the transcendental talent there. Masa is very mechanically gifted. Even the Pepega players have great mechanics, just don't know when to go in most of the time. I think like in terms of mechanics, Toby has been nothing special.
When's the last time you've seen Toby play Lucio?
Like
honestly, I can't remember.
Did he not play
in
playoffs? Could be wrong. It's been a minute, guys. It's been a minute.
Playoffs.
Yeah, like
even then, historically, he was never like leaping off the page in terms of just mechanics.
Lucio,
but when you're comparing to a role that has seen a lot of increase in depth, he kind of falls down. I think he's fine. In a vacuum, I do like Toby, but when compared to his peers, he's not what he used to be.
Yeah. No, he's like Toby used to be what Miro was for Winston.
Yes.
Keyword. The same fate, not exactly the same fate, but a similar fate has reached him where, like once again, like we don't know if you're getting a Lucio meta. Now you gotta put a boy on Baptiste.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly, you can make a difference there with very good mechanics. And if you have to have your, like, it could just be the case that they're just playing creative in Bedosin, maybe. Also, like, keep in mind, we've talked about this last episode where, like, this idea, like, where Christopher said, okay, this main shot caller coming from the main support position, that is really not that much the case anymore, and is also not desired, and definitely not lived in Korean teams for the most part. So, like, yes, there's intangible value in having a veteran like Toby in there. I'm not sure that it comes from the shot calling, though.
Bedosian shot calls, too.
Yes,
he does.
That's where it comes from.
He does.
Yeah, and that's more interesting. Bedosian, like, season 1,
crazy player. Like,
right? Like, in the entire... Okay, so... Yes, Jonak was the best flex support in 2018.
Without a doubt.
But because flex support then also in the playoffs went to as far as Roadhog, Bedosian showed it all in that regard. So nuts in that. Season 2.
Just drove that Spitfire.
Yeah, it's like...
Well, look like a brand new player. Like that.
Anyone
was
else but Krillin starts. Like,
for real, dude. That was rough.
Yeah, I think he was below average performer. Not sure if that was actually the case. Once again, players exist in the context of their team and are in as such indivisible from them. But just like from the output that he actually delivered, he was not great. We'll see how that changes. Once again, reunited with Chengdu as their head coach, season 1 championship winning coach. Maybe he has a formula to keep these guys in check. Possible. In general, I think also just the things I've heard go into that direction, that they could be as high as like 6-5, something like that.
Yeah, I think it's possible if the Scrimbucks are positive, if the tea leaves are coming back with them good vibes. I could see it. I really could. I think their tank line, Gesture has a lot to kind of prove. I will say I wonder what Prophet looks like without his duo buddy. I think that'll be a first. We'll have to see.
Seems to be a lot of reasonable depth at all the positions, and assuming that nobody just completely falls off the map and is completely like, they lose 4 fingers on their hand or something like that. Like, this should be, as you said, this should be a team that finishes well. Definitely a team that could just straight up qualify for playoffs.
Oh yeah.
Bypassing play-ins even. I think the biggest thing is being in the Pacific.
Yes.
Yeah, that's tough. That is tough.
Definitely tougher matches overall, but overall, are you guys at all worried? So there's this kind of there's a storyline being fed right now to the Overwatch League community that bringing on 3 London Spitfires is taking on apathy and a culture of mediocrity after a team who squeaked by one season 1, but not because people really felt that they were the best team, more that the meta fit them and came in at the right point. Yep. In season 2, probably much more performed to like their skills and the caps, but still this idea of like London Spitfire combined the 2 best Korean rosters into one roster, and then outside of getting the actual championship, hasn't produced these prolonged results. That bringing these 3 players on doesn't allow any of these 3 players to be able to move beyond their London Spitfire roots or whatever you were, however far back you want to go with the roots, and ultimately come back to, we've just moved some really great players who had some issues, whether it was with their individual play styles or the way that they communicated or whatever. They're now back into a point where none of them can improve to a level because they're in a way tied to each other.
I would agree with that sentiment that what Gen G has done is ripped the soul out of London, no pun intended, and put it in Seoul. They've taken their 3 arguably best players. I think you can definitely talk about Fury there, but 3 top performers on that roster, put them on their team with one of their coaches, and now you inherit a lot of those same traits. Very punchy, very meta dependent, could be inconsistent, right? But I'm going to use an anecdote that Yiska likes to bring up from time to time, and it's this idea that if you take a student in anything and you put them around the best students, if you take a problem child, let's say, and you put them at the smart kid table, they're going to inherit this drive, this mentality of teamwork, of working together, sharing ideas, and they'll adopt that over time. That's how I'm projecting this team to go. I think they're going to be very punchy, very inconsistent early, and I think by the end we should hopefully have full strength Prophet bought into the Soul system, whatever that might be, and ideally that's how this works. I think that's a very apt anecdote. If these were the problem children for London, we put them in a new system. We give them a nice honeymoon phase and say, beautiful, you're on a new team, new system. You can buy in if you have success. If you don't, that's fine. That's something that these players are going to have to face. We saw that in season 2. It wasn't great, but these are championship players. They went from GC Busan, won Apex season 4, won APAC, won Overwatch League season 1. These are winners. Now they've just suffered their first loss, right? That's going to do something to someone. That's going to kind of spur on a mental reset, and putting them in Seoul hopefully accentuates that, accelerates that a little bit faster. But I would agree with the narrative.
Just to address like the community concern, I think it is reasonable to ask if there are problems that are not fixable or Seoul doesn't have the tools to fix.
Sure.
That is very reasonable because we don't know what actually went wrong in season 2.
No.
Right? So I also don't know. I can look at this.
We can speculate, but yeah, that's hard to say.
Like I can look at the at their players and go like, okay, yeah, I recognize there was something incomplete last season. I couldn't tell you if the Seoul system like fills those holes. Really couldn't tell you. I can tell you what I've been hearing about their performance. I can also not tell you how good their coaching stuff is. I don't know what Chengdu does. Initially in season 1, I was told not much other than temper people. I was told that the rest of this coaching staff that we know of also don't do much or much sensical stuff. And then they have 3 analysts who I know nothing about. I don't know who they are. And sometimes the thing is, a team is invisibly carried by one individual that isn't on the forefront of anything and just like is like the guy that just understands Overwatch and just tells it to the people. Then maybe those coaches are good at teaching it to players or whatever. That might be a quality they have. But it is entirely intransparent to me how good that coaching staff is. And it is intransparent to me if the sole players that were on that team already are the things that this London Spitfire roster needed to fill the holes that they had in season 2, or if it's just a meta situation or whatever it is. It's entirely intransparent. I trust what they are currently doing much more than what the past told us. I also think saying they were championship type players also only has so much value in Overwatch, because the same can be said for Miro. Goodbye. The same could be said for Yu Jaehong.
Sure.
Average. The same could be said for Eska. Never made it there. Like, right? It's like we can use these tools, but they're not great at predicting whatever is happening. Of course, this season generally is super volatile, and in that regard, I don't know, and we'll have to see. And generally, like, imagine just like the aspects that could be coming in. Now, okay, once again, I have to say, no spoiler, no leaks, no information, but hypothetically, what if all the Chinese homestands take place in Korea because of that situation? Like, they haven't closed anything, or to my knowledge, don't have the issue there. So what if, for instance, an OGN or whatever would host the homestands in that country? Would that not change a lot for them in terms of practice quality and like travel schedule and whatnot? Wouldn't that ridiculously, like, that's way better than what the deal Justice has, right? So we'll have to see. There's so much that could go right or wrong. And generally, like, we're basically, like, we're in the vast ocean, and we found like driftwood, and we're like tangling along, trying to get to the shore to understand and make power rankings. But really, we're like, the next wave could just blast us away. And maybe the next wave is the coronavirus, or the next wave is a patch, or the next wave, whatever it is, but it's entirely unpredictable.
These teams in like the 6th through 12th also tend to have some very volatile aspects to them.
Yeah.
Where it's like, we're talking about them, it's like they should do, I mean, even looking at this one, right? Like, imagine a world in which Prophet can't play at all anymore. What happens in a world where Prophet just falls off a cliff and plays even worse than he did with London?
Yeah, that's
played great with London. Do take that back, sir.
Continues to disappoint everybody, including Yiska.
Not me.
Cry into his, he can never.
No, he had a good
never
performance.
disappoint. I mean, it was fine, but like,
I was disappointed that he didn't pick up Doomfist, but that's as far as my disappointment went.
I mean, yeah, you put him on main, you're like, well, but there's just a lot of volatility in these ones. It feels like there's always just like, what if this thing doesn't happen that should probably
there's just like
happen?
One fatal flaw.
Yeah, there's like this one thing, and as we get into these top teams, there's less of that. But there's, even like, again, Chengdu, right? We were just talking about Chengdu and about
you need leave to be good.
Yeah.
What
if
happens
leave isn't good? Or you talk about Hangzhou, like, what if one of their tanks can't flex onto a needed meta hero?
Yep.
They have no depth there. What does that do? So that's where we are in these like 6 to 12th ranking teams. Where like honestly, any of these teams, I feel like if everything goes the right way for them, are top teams easily.
Mm-hmm.
But also teams are like, oh man, you could be you could barely eke into play-ins if you f this up. So let's hope they don't. Let's hope they don't do that. We need to keep going through these. We're going so long. 1 hour and 54
You just
minutes.
get an extra long one, guys.
We
It'll
still
be
have
okay.
3 teams or 4 teams? 3?
2?
We have 2.
Okay.
2 teams. The next one we're going to is the Guangzhou Charge. Myself at 6th, Yiska at 7th, Joe at 8th for an aggregate of 7th. Let's talk a little bit about this team, and we're going to do that by I think talking about probably, and this is the team that I didn't get to like spend. I was even talking to Joe. I was like panicking. It was like 40 minutes before the show starts. I'm like, Joe, I've been up all morning. I've been trying to get all my thoughts together, and I'm like, I ran out of time for Guangzhou. And so, but I do know this, and I know that Joe, you are super high on Krong.
Yeah, I think it does not get talked about enough. I think this team in general doesn't really get talked about enough. I was very wrong in my season 2 estimate of this team. I like a lot of pieces on this roster. I think my gut is still hesitant to put them higher for a lot of the same reasons I had them last year, but that they proved me wrong then. So I believe that they should do that now. I like the coaching staff. They just signed Creed from Shanghai Dragons. And if he has anything to do with their stage 3 run, I think that should be a sizable bonus for this team, who already had like a pretty surprising, strong strategic mind. They were quick to get off the GOATS hype train. They started to play a lot more DPS and Control. They started to play Sombra. They started to play Doom a little bit. Some of those strategies didn't necessarily work, but they were quick to get off it because they knew they were not going to beat some of the best teams. And I mark that as a strong point. But if you look at each member of this roster in a vacuum, I really do like it. Maybe outside of Chara, Krong, sizable upgrade over Hoppa, and just a bunch of just individually talented players. Can they come together? They did last year for the most part. Definitely peaking in Rollock. This season should be much of the same way. I think this team's going to do very, very well.
They did have the great strategic coach in Curry Shot, whose jersey is for sale by me because he's not with them anymore. But do you think that factored at all into how well they did at the end of the season?
Definitely. That definitely helped them along. But I don't think that losing him is a death knell. I think that they'll do okay. I think they'll definitely make do without. But yeah, exciting team to keep your eye on. I think this is the year, barring any kind of crazy nonsense happening in Asia. This is a team that I think people are really going to start to double down on and become fans of. I think Shu is criminally underrated. I think I've swayed enough opinions with Twilight. I think it's time for Shu to get his time in the spotlight because people are just completely sleeping on him. I think he's one of the best.
Yiska, what do you think about Guangzhou?
Weird
got him
team,
at
right?
7.
To rank. I think their DPS line is really solid. With some question marks, but it's fine. I think they still have a potential. It's hard for me to, of course, like rank the Chinese or like Waya in that regard. Like how is he pronounced?
Ouya, like oolong. Ouya.
Okay. Yeah, that's a hard one.
Psychology.
Not that it matters much, to be honest.
Say the P.
Yeah, pretty much. I'm asking. But I think Neptuno Shu could be very good as a backline.
Yes, especially if we're gonna see BAP. I think Neptuno and Harry Hook have this weird. I have this weird crackpot theory that two former players that have had success in very aim heavy heroes or games. I think they could pick up BAP pretty quick.
I'll say though, if I had to evaluate my pick, it's either stay or lower. From what I know now.
That's fair.
That it?
I think it's a strong team.
It's just a good, it's just a good team. They didn't, they're not changing. I mean, they're changing quite a bit, but I don't know, just kind of like the overall identity of the team doesn't feel like, if you watched them last year, I feel like you kind of know what to expect this year.
I'd like to see another main tank. It's not that I think Rio is bad. I think Rio is another person that's like kind of slept on, very flexible, played a lot of different heroes, looked okay, looked serviceable. Something that can't really be said about a lot of tanks. They always have that one character that's just like, maybe we don't put him on that guy. Rio does it all and does it all pretty well. I'd like to just see them build out that depth. That's my fatal flaw with Charge. I want to see a little bit more depth at tank. Krong's good. Rio's good. Give me somebody else.
Yes.
Yeah, that's interesting. We'll have to see. This is, I think, one of the teams where you just kind of got to trust the paper on this one. It's a little hard to.
I think that their DPS in general is kind of how I'd like to build a hypothetical team. You have a hyper specific player in Happy. If there's a Widow, you're going to put Happy in and he's going to just dominate, right?
Yeah.
You have Nero, who is a lot more flexible, has a specific hero in Farah, but can flex to a lot of different things. Played a Mei. I wasn't super big on his Mei, but seems like he's been getting better at it. And Eileen, again, not a colorless flex, but very flexible, solid player. Not somebody who I don't think is going to blow people away, but has a specific hero in Doomfist, has a Farah, Sombra to a degree. Good player. I really like how they've set up their DPS. I think it's good. Very, very good. Well structured.
All right. Should we go to the last one we're discussing today then?
Sure.
Let's do it.
All right. The last one we're discussing today is the Vancouver Titans.
Dum, dum, dum.
I've got them at 7. You two got them at 6.
Yes.
Vancouver Titans have definitely made some changes this year, but I think everybody agrees that, at least here, agrees that overall the changes combined with the improvements other teams have made gets them a net loss over the year. Added Fissure at main tank. No more Bumper. Added
no more.
Jaehong behind Twilight for probably way too much money. That's where the Vancouver Titans are at. They've definitely changed up their coaching a bit too. Obviously, with Harsha down in Houston now for the Outlaws. It's going to be interesting. I think that this is a really polarized ranking. I think a lot of people are
weirdly enough,
have very strong opinions about how high the Vancouver Titans should be. But Yiska, tell me why not?
Okay, so here's the thing. In my rankings, if you go on GG Intel and check my power rankings for the 10th to 6th, I tell you straight up, I don't think they're a 6th average team. They are not 6th in the conventional idea for me, the way I ranked every other team. I think they are so highly volatile that the range I was giving people is much more likely to be the case than whatever 6th tells you. So I think I have them from 2nd to 10th or something, because I still think whatever happens in that roster, they could literally wrestle, brawl each other in the green room, come out and just still beat half the teams.
Yes,
based on the talent they have there. So they're never going to drop past 10th. But like, there's so much volatility in that roster, and I don't see a lot of de-escalating factors.
Nope.
So We're talking intangibles, and it is not opaque to fans what we're talking about. And this will likely also, unless someone feels the need to talk about it eventually, never be discussed. But granted, they were still functional doing so. So again, you add Fissure, who now maybe we can argue is maybe a better individual player than Bumper. Possibly. I'm not even convinced on that. But also has a tendency to not play through a season.
Yep.
And that is a big problem if you have only one main tank.
Yep.
So that's the volatility I talk about. And of course, like it feels like we're now repeating talking points of all the other power rankings that also mentioned this issue. This was already like independently of each other. Everyone comes to that, like everyone who knows roughly what happened there comes to the conclusion that this is a powder keg, right?
Yes.
And we'll just have to see. It's not impossible that they are third or second.
Totally. Yeah.
That is like it's still a very viable probability here. It is just how do you express that they're either 10th or second, for instance? How would you rate that? Like, where would you put them in the power rankings if that's your belief? So, that's basically how I arrived at this spot 6. Also, of course, taking into account that they have some of the most trips, and I think trip in itself is like wasted practice time, and also a lot of miles, not the most, but a solid amount. And combined with all of that together, it's just like a concoction of absolute chaos that could strike out positively and they finish second, or
they could seriously bottom out this season. And I know that's almost like heretical to say for a team that looked so dominant last year, but when you have everything points, every little detail, you have, their owner / GM Steve going out and saying that they value teamwork and team play over a lot of other things. They weigh it very highly. Then you sign a player who has a history of not being a fantastic team player. Can that be fixed? There's always that possibility, but it wasn't fixed in London. It wasn't fixed in Gladiators. It wasn't fixed in Seoul. Why do you think you can do it? Right. Then you sign Ryu Jae-hong, who will probably never see playtime over Twilight. Ever. Maybe alongside of him, if there's a meta that calls for double flex support, sure, I think that's fine. Can Ryu Jae-hong be that glue guy behind the scenes? Maybe. I find it very hard to believe that Seoul would let that person go. Another team, another franchise that will shell out for people who are valuable. If Ryu Jae-hong was valuable, why did they let him go?
Just like this is public knowledge. Like just like to think back. Jae-hong was not a calming influence on Lunatic High whatsoever.
No.
He was the opposite from
he's a rally and amp almost too much.
Yeah.
And if you have people that already are on edge due to travel, due to internal team struggles that have been going on for a while, again, I look at Tizzy and I go, hey, why is Tizzy being subbed in for playoffs? This is a very Fissure situation. Seems very Fissure-like, You have Bumper being removed going into playoffs. You have Fissure being removed going into playoffs. Now you have iRemix. Now you have Tizzy. Why is that? I don't think I don't think scrims make that up, right? There's problems with this team that have not been properly addressed. I look at the coaching staff. I look at the management. How do you fix this team going into the midseason when they inevitably mess up and explode? I don't know.
I think this is a team that starts out strong and probably halfway through the second homestand or the second whatever, like major travel, they start falling off. The wheels start coming off the tracks. I mean, we know like Pejian is not super highly spoken of. I don't trust that the head coach right now is in a position that he actually has full control over these.
Not at all.
We'll call them superstars.
Yeah. Now, to defend them ever so slightly, yes, if they can avoid stepping on the landmines, they have a star-studded roster that will brute force over a lot of teams.
They should finish top 3.
But the average is there. You probably will step on a landmine with the advent of travel. Granted, we don't know exactly what's going on with Asia, so that could be playing in their benefit, to be fair.
I don't think we've seen a single team yet in Overwatch League history that hasn't had a landmine to deal with.
Exactly. So this is the team that has the strongest landmines. They have, the nukes hiding under the chessboard. And if they make one wrong move, there goes the dynamite, right? There goes the world. We've got a mutually assured destruction on every player. The whole thing goes up in smoke. And now we're 16th. That's a very real possibility.
Also, odd season runaway.
True.
Not that it matters, really, realistically.
if you're going to be, reading the tea leaves, historically, runaway is underperformed in odd seasons. So.
Yeah, I don't think Janu's hero pool is wide enough either.
Nope.
See, that really I don't know about that. I really do kind of. It's not that I disagree. I do kind of raise an eyebrow because he has played Wrecking Ball in the past. So is it the right heroes? I don't know. Possibly not. But I do wonder if we see Wrecking Ball if he doesn't start. I don't know.
If he doesn't start?
Yeah, like if he doesn't like start as like main tank, like if it's going to be like Wrecking Ball and like a flex tank, he could be that Wrecking Ball. Granted, we did see Fisher play Wrecking Ball for Seoul on some select control maps, but I don't know. You could put Sominsu on Diva if there's like a Diva Wrecking Ball. I think he'd be fine at Diva. It's tough. People are talking about low hit scan. I agree. Stitches talk about washed. It's quite washed. Sominsu, again, workhorse of the team. I think he's going to do whatever it takes to try and keep this team together. God bless him, because he's got his work cut out for him. Twilight's a stud. Slime's a stud.
Yeah.
If they can get Fisher to work, again, fantastic main tank, but that is a tough task.
Yep, that's not a bet I want to take.
Oh, not at all. I would bet that this team does
especially
poorly.
With the interesting thing is if this is what the roster looks like and there's nothing to there's no safety net, right? No. Gladiators, Seoul Dynasty had a safety net where Fisher's not working out. We're gonna make the change, and they did. And they didn't do as well. But okay, let's see now if they didn't make that call, right? What's that gonna look like? So, I don't know. There you have it. Our 10 through 6 rankings. I think I don't know if I have the image for our bottom 15 or not. I'll see if we've got it all together. Yeah, we do. Boom. There it is. Our bottom 15 right there for you. It's we're surprisingly more on the main page than I think, or same page than I think most people developing power rankings kind of by committee coming in and debating them.
Makes sense. I mean, a bunch of sources or like reasons or reasonings, like we talk about Overwatch, so we kind of model the game in a similar way, I would assume. So even last year we weren't that far apart. It makes sense in that regard.
We always have like one or two teams that are just like way out there, way more bullish, way more bearish.
We also usually sober and not on DMT when we do our power rankings and have Justice in midfield. So
yeah. Got him.
Looking at Fusion, looking at Florida, Justice. Those are teams, guys. Come on.
They are teams, indeed. Thanks for hanging out, chat. You guys are great. Hope you had fun. We'll be back with 5 through 1. I don't think the teams overall are very surprising, but maybe the justifications will be. Let's go ahead and get out of here. Big thank you for the episode. supporting the episode, to our patron producers, Battle Crab, Made, Pin, Lotion, Charlie L, and Audio Compass. That's Charlie L and Audio Compass. New patron producer in Audio Compass. What else we got going on in Patreon world, Yiska?
You catch me directly opening it. So, new patrons. I hope I have the right template. Yes, that's a Syntax and Audio Compass. New patrons. And is Audio Compass a new patron producer even?
Yes.
Oh, he checked in.
$25 tier. Let's go.
Oh, that's a tier 3 sub.
That's big.
Pick up your OnlyFans
Huge.
link in the DMs.
Right. Yeah, the Tactical Crouch OnlyFans. I think it's the first time we'd have to pay people to listen to
Joe
the show.
shaved.
He did.
See,
He
visibly.
manscaped.
Dude, Manscaped needs to get on this podcast because we'd have some fire segments with Manscaped.
What?
Like as a sponsor. If we got like Manscaped as a sponsor.
Do you guys have Manscaped in
brand?
Germany?
No.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like a
It's like
Okay.
monthly. We'll get into it later.
yeah. we could talk about that another time. 5-star iTunes review, Joe. What up?
We've got B Ranger 04. Thank you for leaving a review. I wish you had a better name. And Simon the Zealot. You guys need to be more creative. Simon, I respect the StarCraft
That's
nonsense.
a good one. Come on.
That's not bad.
I mean,
That's not bad. But I want some nonsense.
Zealot. Nobody uses that word other than they played the
Yes.
StarCraft game. I don't even know what
Nope.
zealot means.
No, it
outside
doesn't
the
exist.
Dude, this might just be like a fanatic of some religion.
It's possible.
We don't know.
Hopefully not. I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt.
Crouchism.
It's
Crouchism. Become a zealot of Crouchism. $25
There you
into the
go.
Patreon.
Sink it in.
Well, I'm trying to think of different ways to say it. Now I can't think about it right now. I have to close out the show.
Yes.
Yeah. Cool. All right. We're going to go ahead and get out of here. Big thanks to all the subs and donations today. We had a lot. Pasta, Dactyl, Ice
Yes.
Jello, Enco, Yiska out with 104 bits. Streisand, the MFG with 5, 10, 11, 12, like 13 gifted
Just
subs.
balling out of control.
Thanks so much. Thank you to all the new follows as well. Make sure to follow the show everywhere at Tactical Crouch, on Twitter at Tactical_Crouch, and Patreon at patreon.com/Tactical Crouch. Otherwise, you can listen to the show in its entirety on audio just by searching for it in any of your podcast feeds. So we do upload. We kind of shorten up the segments a little bit on YouTube. We shorten those up, put them out there so they're a little bit easier to digest. But on the audio side of things, we just upload them in their entirety. You can get the full 2 hour and 15-minute episode essentially the day we record it. So if that's the way you want to consume it. Otherwise, youtube.com/KickedTripod is where you can find those clips. And then afterwards, the full episode on video as well. We've been shortening it up, though. So thanks to everybody who's been tuning in for those and having great combos. Yiska, you had a great article this week about Overwatch League teams going shopping. Definitely go check that out. But what else you got going on?
Yeah, I'm definitely going to produce some articles this week, 2 or 3, and then hopefully an announcement at the start of next month. We'll see.
Oh,
sweet.
And of course, as soon as I feel secure in this meta stabilizing, I'll work on the Scrumbucks Stock Exchange.
Sweet. Joe, what about you, man? What do you got coming up with? What do you got coming up?
So my, fully fledged article power rankings will be probably going live tomorrow. Let's say it's a little late today, but big document, long 7K words, kind of detailing how I feel about each team. If you don't feel like listening to all of us, jabber on, that's going to be the home for any questions that people have as to how I've viewed this season going into it, how I viewed each team going into it. It's all there, along with some honorable mentions and wishful corrections I could have made. But all in all, that's coming. I'm gonna kind of ramp up the storytelling aspect of things going in. We're about less than 2 weeks off from the start of the 2020 season, so it's time to get everybody excited about the stories of what's to come.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. As for me, I've been streaming a little bit more, doing some like show prep and VOD review stuff, as trying to kind of finish out my power rankings and keep up on top of everything Overwatch League. Got a little extra time, so I've been doing that. So if you want to hang out, twitch.tv/KickedTripod. Otherwise, you can find me everywhere else at KickedTripod. And with that, we're going to go ahead and get out of here. Chat, thanks for hanging out. Have an awesome one. We'll see you next time. Episode 74 for our top 5 teams in Overwatch League.